and welcome to this week's Cosmic Prayer. I am feeling excited to be here today and also aware right now it's a little bit choppy, and I'm affirming itself for today's Cosmic Prayer. I'm here in the UK and we are staying with New Thought Media Network. And if you're watching, welcome to this week's Cosmic Prayer. Every week, I invite on an inspirational guest, a thought leader, teacher, sharer of wisdom, spiritual leader, minister, practitioner, somebody who has an amazing outlook on life and on prayer. And this week, I think I can check the boxes on most of those things I have said. And I feel really grateful and excited to be bringing on Ryan Joseph Allen onto the Cosmic Prayer. Last year, shared about his life and as a transformational coach and speaker and leader, and just about to PhD his doctorate program, and has written his best-selling book, has authored this book, My Drug Dealer Brought Me to God. So that was what brought to being really interested in Ryan. We'll bring Ryan right now onto the Cosmic Prayer. Hello and
hi.
Welcome. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you? Thank you for having me back to join you. It's always such a pleasure to spend time with you and spend time in your energy. So thank you.
Oh, listen, it's great to be here with you. I'm just affirming and knowing this is the right time to say a cosmic prayer and know that the internet and this technology is working perfectly. Can communicate with grace and ease. Yeah. Welcome on to the Cosmic Prayer, and welcome to those that are listening and here right now. Wayne is with us and Fiona also. Great to be here with you on, here we go. Sorry, just had to bring this up. Wayne is sending us rainbow hugs. And Ryan, welcome back at the very final stages of completing your doctorate program. I'm really excited to be here with you and to learn more about the work that you do, and to refresh me and the listeners with for writing your book and how that came about. And let's begin there. What was it that inspired you to your story onto paper in the world?
Yeah, so that was an adventure. I wasn't too sure that. So I had shared my story. So it started out. I helped form a nonprofit in the Cincinnati, Ohio region several years ago. And we would have guest speakers come in once a month and do an event, a community event. It was just around creating healthy, safe conversations for people. It was called a safe haven. And so we would have a community speaker come in and share. And I realized that oftentimes I was emceeing, actually all the time, I was emceeing these events. So I would end up sharing my own story. We'd be talking about mental health struggles, with addiction. We would talk about all kinds of things, suicide prevention and awareness. And so I'd end up sharing my story just really openly and saying, oh yeah, I'm a survivor. I had attempts when I was a teenager and had, struggled with that. And, oh, I dealt with addiction, or I dealt with this. And let me tell you a little bit of my story. And it was just like a natural thing, me sharing. And I realized when I shared, it allowed everyone else in the audience. Now, these were events that had 20, 30, 40, 50 people there. They weren't super large. They were meant to be a community event. But I realized people shared more when I shared. I guess being the MC, like kind of the liaison between the speaker and the audience. So I started sharing, and people would often say, like, that was really beneficial. Did you plan to, like, kind of co-share this and lead? And I'm like, no, I was really just emceeing, like welcoming everybody in, introducing the speaker, guiding the conversation, as an MC does oftentimes. But I would share my story. And in sharing that story, like I said, I really got this amazing feedback that it was really helpful to people. And I started to realize how powerful storytelling is. And so I had this epiphany. As I used to walk on the creek, I would sometimes record audio messages, and I would call them my creek walks and talks. And I was down there recording, and one day I got this idea that said, you should put these into a book. And I said, okay, maybe one day. And the divine later came to me and said, yeah, you might do that. You might put those in a book, but I have a real book for you. And the title's My Drug Dealer Brought Me to God. And I said, okay, so I'm supposed to share about my addiction and my recovery and my spirituality, after my awakening when I got sober and all of these things. And God's like, yeah. He's like, put it in a book. And so I was at the time very busy, working, I don't know, 60, 80 hours a week, something crazy, very American hours, which are, I always say my goal is to work European hours, which I'm sure is not universal in Europe, but to work, 30, 35 hours, 40 hours, something more manageable than 60, 70 or 80. And so I went on a vacation, and I went all by myself. I didn't have technology. I did have an iPad with me, but I had no connection to internet, no cell phone service. And so I had my phone with me one day, and I was taking pictures of the beach, and the divine came in and said, it's time for you to record your book. You might not, because to me, writing wasn't like sitting on a computer and typing out, or on my iPad typing out, wouldn't have been enjoyable. And I didn't even have my laptop with me. So God was like, just share it on your voice memo on your phone. So record it on your phone. So I did. I recorded 17 hours of my story while I was there on that trip. I just do a few hours a day, just kind of in my leisure. It was kind of like, as I was sharing, I was also processing, and it was very, very meant to be like a conversation with me. And so I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with that, right? Because when I came back to the States, I wanted to share that. But I once again went back into that hustle and bustle, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, and there was just no space on my plate for that. And so what happened is COVID came, which was devastating in many ways. But I always say that there are diamond linings and things. So there's always a diamond lining. Some people call that a silver lining. I like to say it shimmers more like a diamond. And if you really look closely, depending on the lighting, depending on, this and that and the other, sometimes it's just brilliant, right? And it creates all these rainbows that pour out. And so I said, okay, well, what's the diamond lining here? And it was that God really put it on my heart. It said, it's time for you to work on this project that you put off because you were too busy. And so I reached out to a couple book publishers, and reached out to Hay House and Balboa, which is their self-publishing branch. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do that kind of route. And lo and behold, I found the perfect publisher, which is Publish Your Purpose Press here in the US. And it's kind of a hybrid publisher between self-publishing and a kind of New York style publisher. But the really cool thing about this publishing company, why I was really drawn to it, is because it's owned and operated by LGBTQ plus owners and operators. And to me, that was really important to, if I'm going to pay money for something or pay into something or help someone, I wanted to help people in our community as well. I identify in that community myself, and that's a big piece of my story around how I became just to start using drugs and in the subsequent story afterwards. So I really was called to do that in that way. And so that's kind of how it all got started. And from there, I
Wow.
met a brilliant manuscript strategist, and she really helped bring those audio portions onto paper. And then we had endless strategy and editing sessions. And the book came out in actually on the 28th of September of this past year in 2021, and was such a blessing, and was supposed to be out 6 months before that, right? Or 4 months or whatever, but in divine timing, everything happens perfectly. So that's how it transpired. I will say one caveat about writing a book is that this is a snapshot of my life, roughly 3 years ago. And so when it came out a half a year ago, 6 months ago or so, that was one of the biggest challenges for me. It was like, this isn't really current to every belief I have or every learning I've had. I felt like I've had so much immense learning and growth the last couple of years that I wasn't able to put that into the book, because at some point you have to stop it. You have to stop the writing and stop editing and get it out there. And this is where I hear a lot of authors kind of get choked up or get kind of like lost in translation. It's because they keep editing and just editing and editing. And you have to know that as humans on this, soul journey, we have endless learning and growth and expansion on current beliefs and current learning that we've had. And so I just at some point had to stop it and say, whoever picks up the book is meant to pick up the book and read it. And I don't know if I don't
It's
know
going to be perfect.
Exactly, in divine alignment. So that was one of my biggest learnings for myself, is that sometimes I don't have to see it as perfect.
Yes.
Someone else might pick it up and they might think it's perfect. And I have to let go of my attachment to that. One of my favorite spiritual teachers is a close friend of mine. He always says, high involvement, low attachment. So be highly involved in the process and have very little attachment to the outcome.
Yes. Oh, I like that. High involvement. Beautiful. So I'm aware here that there's definitely a time lag with the vocals. So I'm praying that this just flows perfectly, because there are a couple of things I'd really like to pick up on what you've been talking about. It was amazing how you knew in your heart that you wanted to work less hours. And then you listened. You were writing, when you said you were writing your book, you were working 17 to 20 hours. You did it in a week in much less time than the 80 hours that you were used to doing. Isn't that incredible how the book was flowing through and it was happening in exactly the right divine timing that you had stated that you'd intended, that you wanted that to live your life in that slower way. And the other piece was when you talk about the divine, I'm just really interested in your life, and is that your way of praying?
Yeah, Laura, we cut out a little bit, but I think I got the gist of what you were asking. And prayer for me comes in the form of time in nature, which I identify as Gaia. It's what I call nature, Mother Gaia, Mother Earth, all the same thing. And being in, so for instance, yesterday was the spring equinox. So I had friends that were celebrating in all kinds of ways, because I have friends in all different faith and belief systems. And so there were, some friends doing some kind of neo-paganism rituals, which are just like essentially meditation and incense and connecting to the earth and connecting to the elements. And I really love that. I'm very connected to the elements. And so there's a piece of me that gets prayer in that way, just by being outside in nature, walking with Gaia, walking along a river, a stream, next to a waterfall, next to a creek, in a forest, on a mountain, on a beach. All of those places are where God meets me very organically. My other biggest form of prayer is definitely meditation. So I sit formally in meditation every day, at least once. And I would say from there, really a third way is through healing modalities that I've been trained or taught or picked up on. And so every day before my meditation, or sometimes after, at some point during my meditation process, I'll shift over. So I shift to send healing to the planet, to the universe, to my friends and family, to the animals, to the atmosphere and environment. I always say people, plants, and animals, and the atmosphere and environment, earth, water, fire, air, are all part of my prayers. And so that's a bit of a more formal prayer that I say either out loud or I say quietly. And I also then send out healing energy. So I was trained in a couple different healing modalities, including like Kundalini healing, or oneness, which is a hands-on blessing, that movement out of India. Several years ago, I was trained in that. And I have other healing modalities I picked up on from family and friends. But essentially what I do is I spend time connecting. And then I also say a prayer to my archangels and other, I call them the Council of Light. That's going to be like my ascended masters. So Buddha, Jesus, Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, which some people are surprised by, but Mary Magdalene is a beautiful, beautiful healer. And anyway, and that's one of the people that I feel really close to in my heart. So prayer to me comes in many forms, but I would say that's kind of the top three would be formal meditation prayer, healing and prayer, and time in nature and time with Gaia. But really prayer comes in a lot of other ways as well. I mean, it comes for me, as I tuck my daughter in for bed each night, we say a prayer. And she's almost 11. She turns 11 next month. And she, zooms through them. She's like, I'm praying for this, 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 and this. And it's the same thing every night. And that's okay. But it's just setting there's no expectation for her, right? It's her own journey, but setting the stage for her to be able to share, so that she knows what speaking to God is like, and at least one version of speaking with God. And that way, at least she has one thing to fall back on if later in life she needs it or decides that that's the route she wants to take in her spirituality or kind of religious beliefs. I would say we're a much more spiritual family than religious family, but we definitely have Jesus at the center of our belief system, in the sense of that we see him as like a main guide for us. And to me, this is something that I talk about a lot when I speak about my book. The word Christian to me means something different than it probably means to most people. So Christian to me means to simply be Christ-like, to be kind, compassionate, loving, caring, healing. Jesus was such a great healer. He performed such great miracles. We talk about that all the time, right? So to me, living my life in emulation of Christ would be Christian, Christ-like. And so when I say I'm Christian or identify as Christian or neo-Christian or New Age Christian, whatever, I'm really identifying with those characteristics of Jesus that I try to emulate and embody so that I can go out into the world and create a better place for myself, for my child, for my family, for the community, for the earth, for the universe. And so I'm
Yeah.
a really big believer in raising my own vibration so that I help raise the vibration of those around me and the planet, the universe, etc. And I do that through many connections with many angels and guides, and Jesus is definitely my main guide. So I consider myself Christian in that aspect, but I would also have many kind of neo-pagan probably practices, which is really just connecting to the earth, meditating in a way that's connected to Mother Nature. I go outside and put my feet flat on the ground, bare feet on the ground, because it's very healing and nurturing and grounding. So I do things like that that are really connected to Mother Nature, Mother Earth.
I'm so excited by everything that you're sharing right now, Ryan, because you're basically expanding this idea of prayer for me, as a connection with our creator, and you're explaining all of these different, amazingly different ways of how you do this on a daily basis, to get yourself into this place of knowing that that you are one with the divine through nature and meditation. And when you're just walking on the ground, putting on the earth, I mean, yes, this is all a prayer, and also that you say that Jesus, you know, for me, how I'm understanding for you, or how I what I believe, you know, Jesus is the example, not the exception. So so we can find this way through discovering that Christ consciousness within ourselves and emulating that and living from a place, knowing that as it was for Jesus, it can be, as he was such an amazing way shower. I'm still lagging a little bit here.
No, yeah, I was kind of giving
your
it.
patience with this.
It's funny you said way shower. One of my favorite songs recently popping up for me is Waymaker, which I think has been done by many, many artists. But I have a rendition that's a little bit, I don't know, just different, one that I've never seen before. And I just was thinking one of the other ways I meditate and one of the ways I pray is through music. So I will listen to a very wide array of music, ranging from like contemporary or traditional Christian, all the way to meditation music out of India, that's much more usually written in Sanskrit or some other language that I can't interpret, except I know I can feel it. I don't need to know necessarily what the words are. I can feel the love in that music, and it transcends all verbiage. It transcends language to me a lot of times. And so, and I have in my dissertation process, I'm currently interviewing individuals, and part of what so my study is based around post-traumatic spiritual growth for the LGBTQ plus community. A lot of words, essentially to say what we are doing is we are essentially looking at people that have experienced trauma around spirituality or religion, particularly those in the LGBTQ plus community or allies. And then we're taking that information and learning about how they grew from that. Because I think there would be one aspect we could research trauma all day. So we could talk about all these horrible traumatic experiences. But to me, it was really important not to just focus on that, but to focus on the other side for growth and how certain individuals went from a really traumatic experience to this place of post-traumatic growth, where they've learned, grew, expanded their consciousness, expanded their awareness, had healing, and now are able to help teach. They're able to help listen for themselves. They're able to help advocate, and really what we're seeing so far, and I can't say this like officially, but just what I'm noticing off the record, is that a lot of these people are, by the end of this post-traumatic growth experience, now they are teachers, they are advocates, they are leaders. And it's really important for them, either in their personal life, a leader of their family. So a leader could be a leader of your family. A leader could be a leader of an organization or a nonprofit, or a leader within your workplace, a volunteer, an advocate for something that you believe in. But regardless of all of that, what I'm seeing so far off the record is that there's this beautiful sense of growth that is just so valuable for others to see, so that we can see how to get from point A to point B, at least for some individuals, right? Not everyone's going to have the same path there. There's millions, trillions of paths. But what we're seeing is from this A to B, from this trauma to the growth, we've seen that there's trends. And so hope is that the research will show some of those trends, and in hopes of helping people understand how to bridge the two. And also for people to pick it up and, be researched, so it's not like casual reading, but people can pick it up. A pastor, preacher, a rabbi, a faith leader, and would be able to learn something about the LGBTQ plus community and how that some religion or spirituality has created a lot of trauma for many people, not just the LGBTQ plus community. What we're seeing, also the ally community, or people that identify just as an ally, essentially just means that you're supporting of the community, that you have an open heart and open mind for the community, that some advocates or some allies, excuse me, are advocates. They're out on the front lines. Other allies are simply just, oh yeah, I have a friend who's LGBTQ plus and I love them just the way they are, and that's great. So it looks different for different people. But yeah, so it's really interesting research, and I don't know what spawned me to go there. So I don't remember my point, except it's really interesting to be able to hear these stories. Oh, I remember. I apologize. So in one of these interviews, someone had mentioned how music is their most powerful form of self-prayer. That's their worship time, is with music. So they turn on music and they either sing or dance or just sit quietly and breathe. They said, I don't really know how to meditate, but I know how to worship. And so it's interesting, these interchangeable words people use, like prayer, worship, meditation, to me, definitely all wrapped up in the same beautiful box. Not that we have to put it in a box, but in the box of what prayer would be, and the description of what prayer would be. All of these things come into play, like formalized prayer, meditation, listening to music, healing work. So, when you even just sit outside in nature and you have a moment where you're able to connect with nature and you send healing, you can just say, even if you've never been trained in this or anything like that, you can just literally say, I'm sending you healing, Earth. I love you. And, calling in, the divine, calling in the creator, and wanting the divine to send you some extra healing, planet Earth, and heal the waters and heal the air and heal the land, heal the people, heal the animals, the plants. And like, you don't really have to know what you're doing, right? There's no right or wrong way. This is just a connection between you and the divine and Mother Nature. So it's very easy to build that simply just by using nature as one of your platforms for connecting to God, to the divine, to source, to creator, to spirit, to universal energy, universal love, to love. Even if you're atheist or humanist, I have many friends that are atheist and humanist and still believe in love, and they still believe in lifting up our planet and healing this planet. So I think one of the things that's been really beneficial to me is also putting those aside, saying, oh, you identify as atheist, you must be less than, because that's what we're taught in the area I live.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. I really was interested in asking you about that, actually, Ryan, because when you mentioned at the beginning of that you were talking about your study, and I wanted to ask you what percentage of people, if any, were atheist, are atheist in your study, and if your study they shifted in their idea of spirituality, then it was okay. Now I can see this makes sense, or believing in a knowing of this is how life works, a different way that life works.
Yeah, and just to provide some clarity, so I can't tell you formal results from it, but just from trends I'm seeing, and just from my own personal experiences in the Midwest of the United States, what I've seen is so many people that have been hurt by formalized religion, that they turn, I don't know if turn's the right word, but on their evolution of their spiritual journey or path, there is a sense of losing all connection with spirit. So that looks like agnosticism oftentimes, or even atheism, or humanism, which is simply, I believe in humans and the value that humans bring to the world. I believe in most humanists believe in love as kind of like their main. That's their main. Their compassion is their main kind of motivator, and so at least from humanists that I'm connected with. So it's interesting because even in my story, that's my story. As I was growing up, I was very connected to the divine. I remember having these beautiful conversations with my aunt Jewel. She was a very, very devout Christian. She would pray for an hour a day, 2-3 hours a day. She would spend time in worship every day. She was just the most devout Christian, the devout spiritual person I knew. And we would have these conversations around God. And I just felt so connected to God when we would talk about it. And I would go to church with her and I'd listen to the music. And that's where, no matter what church I walk into, and on average at least, or I would say, I can't think of a time when I've walked in the church and listened to the music and not connected with it. I've always felt God's presence during music, during either me singing or just listening or both. I felt so connected. So as I got a little bit older, I realized, oh, wow, you're in the LGBTQ plus community and you've heard your family in the deep South. So I have family about 5 hours south of here where I live in Nashville, Tennessee. And I know most people probably see Nashville and they're like, oh, it's a music town, but they lived on the outskirts of town, so about 30 minutes away from the city. And it is very, very conservative, or at least was when I was growing up. And I would hear oftentimes from that family in passing, not directly. They weren't like trying to preach to me, right? But I would hear indirectly, I'd hear conversations and they would say, yeah, LGBTQ people, gay people, they go to hell, this and that about gay people. And, I had a cousin, an older cousin, cousin Billy, and they would say things about cousin Billy that really just broke my heart as a child, because I only had met him a couple times in passing. I thought there was something special about him. I knew he loved dogs, and no one in that family really liked dogs at the time too much or had dogs. And I was like, there's something special about him. He has a very special heart. And so I connected with him, even though he wasn't like a main member of my family. And I would hear my family talk about him. Oh, pray for cousin Billy. I hope he's not gay. He'll end up in the damnation and fire for eternity, whatever. But I would hear that. And so even though in my day-to-day life, I didn't have people telling me those kind of things, I didn't have people preaching this hell and brimstone and damnation, but I had heard it multiple times in passing. And it stuck with my heart so much that when I started to realize I was different, which was at a very young age, but by the time I was like, could cognitively realize what made me different, 8 years old, 10 years old, by that time, my connection with God really dissipated. And then by the time I was a teenager, I would say it was gone. I would identify it as kind of like agnostic and then just kind of just straight atheist. And not in a way where I was going around telling people, oh, I'm atheist, but just in a way where I just had no connection with God. And maybe you would say agnostic, because I think if someone would have asked me, I would have said, oh, I believe in something outside of myself. So maybe agnosticism would have been a better identifier. But regardless, I lost my real connection with God, with the divine, with the creator, with source, regardless of what form that came in. Obviously, it was coming in more of a Christian form as a child. So when I had my spiritual awakening, I just stopped using hard drugs, and that's a whole story in itself. And if I can share that later if you want. But after that, I had this conversation with my drug dealer about a month after I stopped using opioids. I had this conversation with my drug dealer, of all people, and she was telling me about her faith and her beliefs. And essentially, I was able to connect to God through her. I could feel her God in her heart, and I could feel the way that she viewed God. And that she also said something that I hadn't heard in a really long time. And she said, God loves you no matter who you are. Like, God made you that way, and God loves you. Doesn't matter if you're gay or black. She happened to be biracial. She said, doesn't matter if you're black or poor or rich or old or young or anything. Nothing matters. You could have a disability. You could have all of these things. It doesn't matter. Like, God loves you. Like, you were made perfect just the way you are. In that moment, when you were created, you were perfection, and you still are. And I'm paraphrasing. She might have not said it as she kind of said that in a long conversation, but those were like the highlights I got, and I took note, and I said, okay, I believe. I believed when I was little, and I believe now. And the next day, we got in my car. I was taking her to work, and I said, now that I believe in God, I believe in I believe this thing that I felt when I was growing up. How do I have faith? Because to me, faith was like the next step in believing. And so I said, how do we have faith? We talked about it the whole way to work. I dropped her off. The one license plate in front of me that could say faith in the whole state. There were 1.5 million license plates in the state at the time. I looked it up, and there was one license plate that from the state of Kentucky, which is the state I lived in at the time, and that said faith. And it was one of those moments, just like when I was recording my book on vacation. I was recording this part about this experience, about faith. I was talking about this whole experience around faith and believing in God. And I saw a shooting star in the sky as I was recording it on the beach at night. I hadn't seen a whole shooting star. I've been there for 4 days or something, 3 days. I was outside. I was outside all the time because I like to be outside. I didn't see one shooting star. And actually, the visibility there of stars was like really limited. I could only see a couple. And I saw this beautiful shooting star on the sky. And so those messages are times to me when God has really helped me to solidify my faith, my belief, not just my belief, like I said, my faith beyond belief, my faith beyond words. God's really shown me that I can have a relationship with him that is something that whatever feels good to me. It doesn't have to be what I was taught or told or indoctrinated into me. And even though I wasn't indoctrinated by my immediate family, I was indoctrinated by my extended family of this kind of belief system that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't valued, that I wasn't loved, that I wasn't innately beautiful for who I was. And it turned out that I realized through this experience that I had immense growth. And so that's what propelled this dissertation. Is I was sitting there talking with my advisor, and I said, my degree's around leadership. Some people would say like organization leadership, or it's a doctoral program for leadership studies. So it's kind of an interdisciplinary approach. So some people are educators, some people are leaders in the nonprofit or corporate world, et cetera. And so I didn't know I'd be able to focus on this type of trauma and this type of experience. And she's like, oh yeah, absolutely. You're a social scientist. You will be, and you can study pretty much whatever you want in this realm of social science that makes sense for what you're passionate about. And, there's a leadership ties within that. But so really it was this beautiful, I never even thought I'd be able to do this. I didn't know why the divine had sent me to graduate school again and again, because I went back for a master's degree and then went back for this doctoral program. Didn't know why the divine sent me. I don't really love formal education, and I don't get me started talking about education systems and things like that. I always say, anyway, I shouldn't say that, but I'll say it anyway. If you ever want to join a political system, but you don't want to be a politician, go into academia, because it is very similar from what I hear and what I've seen and what I pick up on. And so I will not probably be going into that profession formally, at least long term. I might go in and teach something I'm really called to teach or instruct or lead or guide, something within the university or work for a university for some point. But I won't probably ever become like a lifelong academic for that fact and many other facts. But I was called by God to do this, and I didn't know why. And because I would say, God, like, I don't know why you want me to do this. I don't like reading. I don't like writing. Oh, by the way, you're going to write a book and a dissertation simultaneously at the same time. And I'm like, absolutely not. But I surrendered and said, yes, of course, God, like whatever you put in my path and whatever you put on my heart is what I have to follow, because that's the commitment I made when you picked me off the floor when I was still on hard drugs, and then after, and that's my commitment I made to myself. And it's not just a commitment to God. So there's no like shame, guilt, fear around my commitment to God. My commitment to God is really a commitment to myself. and is a commitment to true authenticity, to my true heart. And my heart's always been filled with love,
Yeah.
even as a child.
Feel that. I can feel your heart filled with love. Thank you for being here and sharing. I'm going to put this on. This is your book. For anyone that's watching right now, it's great to be here with you. If you're here on the Cosmic Prayer, we are with today's guest is Ryan Joseph Allen. Please excuse the internet connection here. I know that Spirit is doing its thing in the most perfect of ways. So if you're here still, thank you for joining on today's Cosmic Prayer. And Ryan's book is called Yes, My Drug Dealer Brought Me to God. And it's his writings of how this happened. And it's shared way, and that it's such a bold title. It kind of in your vulnerability to share on this topic of it's not really a topic, it's your story and your life, and the pain, and also you surrendered to the divine. Really, it's beautiful that you would write this for us to read and to share it like this. Thank you so much for bringing your book to the world. So there it is. You can find this on Ryan's website, which is ryanjosephallen.com. I'll put the link. The link is down below, so you can click on that and go straight to his website and find the book. And we have about 10 minutes left. And I'm just really moved by how you wrote a book and completed a dissertation process through a PhD at the same time, that you really were being moved by the divine and listening to what was yours to do. And that is so inspirational. You may not like, you've been called to actually embrace writing in such a powerful way.
And I really love storytelling. And so there's this aspect of me that doesn't necessarily know if I need to share any more of my story as far as like written out. Like I might write other things, but I'm not sure yet. But I have been called by the divine to help other people share their story. So I have a series of 6 books that I'm currently in the midst of formulating exactly how and where and when. But they're definitely in the mix of things right now, and they'll focus on the LGBTQ plus community and some type of post-traumatic growth story that they want to share. And there'll be 10 to 12 individuals that identify with each letter. So there'll be LGBTQ and then a plus sign. So there'll be 6 books, and there'll be 10 to 12 stories within each book that people are sharing. So I'm going to write the prologue and the epilogue, and then have them write the 10 stories. And really the purpose is to amplify their story, to let them use their voice in a way that I was able to use my voice through this book process, and to get their stories out. So someone, like I said, a pastor, a preacher, or a teacher, or a mom or a dad or a brother or sister or aunt or a cousin or a friend that doesn't necessarily understand LGBTQ plus individuals can pick up this group of books and open up and say, I want to hear some stories about 10 lesbians that I don't know any lesbians, or I transgender, or I don't even know what that is. And I'm gonna pick up the book, learn a little bit in the intro around some basics, there'll be some basics in there, and a little bit of a narrative. And then you're going to read 10 stories, 12 stories of transgender individuals that now maybe you can have a better understanding of what that looks like. And also it will be specifically, it won't just be people's. So it was important for me not to make just a series of books around trauma, right? Because we can sit in our trauma all day long and it's important to share that piece of our story. But I intentionally choosing stories that are filled with some type of growth, and that could be an inner growth, an outer growth, both a spiritual growth. It could be a advocate. A lot of LGBTQ people that go through this process of trauma and growth, they become advocates. So these could be advocates, these could be leaders. It could be a stay-at-home mom who struggled with this and had growth, and because now they recognize that the way they raise their kids is different. That's a growth. So these aren't, they don't have to be like, these aren't like, they don't have to be huge leaders in the community or anything. These are just some everyday people with some leaders. It's a mix. But the purpose of it is to inspire also LGBTQ plus people so they can pick up the book and read it and have courage and build their courage from these people's stories around their bravery and courage and voice. It often helps amplify our own voice when we have like-minded people around us that are loving us for who we are and that we feel connected to, or we feel similar to, or we can whatever. So the book has multiple purposes. It's not just to write books. Like I said, I don't really love writing, so why would I? But because 6, and if I write the prologue and epilogue, and they're 10 pages each, just roughly. Well, there's another 120 pages. But anyway, that would be easy after this whole process. So I'm so excited. But the real mission is for these people that are sharing their story to get their story out, so they can heal themselves and heal others. So people that are trying to learn more about the LGBTQ plus community can pick it up, learn more, and grow and learn in that way. And then also LGBTQ plus people can pick it up and understand their own journey a little bit better, understand avenues that other people took, that they've gotten to a place of healing. And so really there's multiple groups of target audiences, because in the end of the day, what really matters is helping people for me. So even when I was a little kid, when I was 4 years old, people would say, "What do you want to do?" And I'd say, "I just want to help people." People would say, "Well, what job do you want to do that?" In this world we've created, this patriarch society, you have to get a job and make money and blah, blah, blah. And to me, like, that doesn't really resonate. I don't want to just get a job and do whatever. I want to do something that I'm inspired to do. I want to do something that helps people. And so I would answer. So as I got older, I would say, "Oh, I want to be a lawyer. I want to do this, or I want to be a weather." I love the weather. So I was like, "I want to be a meteorologist to help people that are in the path of a storm or whatever." And I just really loved weather. So it was like my passion. So I actually went to college for that for a couple years, shifted goals and shifted areas. But, at the end of the day, it was just about helping people. And so this group of books, is my hope, is that it just helps people, and helps, like I said, these multiple groups. I think it helps the co-authors. It helps people that don't know anything about LGBTQ plus people. It helps the LGBTQ plus community. That's really my goal. And so I know the divine had made me kind of write this book so I could be a master of storytelling in some ways, right? Like putting everything out there. I don't think there's, I was reflecting the other day about my book, and I said, wow, I left out this one thing. And it wasn't because I was, I was embarrassed or ashamed. I really just left it out because there wasn't enough room. But it was funny because I want to share all of these pieces of my story, good, bad, and different. It's putting it all out there. It's not about sharing just your highlights of your good things. It's about sharing all of it. But my hope is by sharing these other people's stories, collectively 60 to 72 stories, that people will really be able to do some healing and really be able to connect and really be able to share their heart and let their heart be heard and felt, and offer some love in a way that I wouldn't have thought I would be interested in doing. Because like I said, I don't really love reading and writing. Like, that is just not, my left brain doesn't like those aspects of the left brain. They can do it and they can do it fine, but
well,
really my goal.
It's amazing how your intention to be that teacher and that leader and healer is showing up in this way, because it's you're doing space of visit, really, and right this as your writing and your learning. These are the tools, because we all have to have, we all have to work with a set of tools to be able to share the media you share and to bring together people's stories. This is so powerful. And what I love, Ryan, is that you're going to write about everyday people all have struggle, and that's a part of our growth and our learning is to be able to navigate that struggle and to see it as, this is also God expressing. So I think it's so beautiful platforming people that we can all relate to, and it's relatable, and people that we could think, oh, that could be my family member, or that could be me, or that could be a friend. It's really powerful. And Robin is here. Robin is saying, this is such important work. Thank you for people. So healing and transformational. Thank you. Oh, this is beautiful. And Bonnie is here. Bonnie is saying she applauds your courage to heal, Ryan. You are recognized, Ryan, for the beauty that you are bringing and sharing and the inspiration. And Wayne is still here, yes, saying thank you for a white circle with a silver ring around it. There we go. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing and for authentically allowing me, and I'm sure those that are watching you, to hear more beyond the words, to understand your intention, or to lift up our awareness of not, trauma and God and choices, our own choices in life, and how we can navigate the choices through understanding that there is something greater going on here.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura. Even with the lag and the technical difficulties, this has been such a beautiful experience, and I really appreciate the love you bring to this beautiful planet, and thank you for allowing me to use my voice and speak and share and resonate with you in this beautiful sacred space. So I really appreciate you creating that container to allow such beauty to be discussed, and I feel so heard and seen. And so thank you for creating such a beautiful platform for that.
Oh, Ryan, thank you for being here and for sharing and for your patience with the technology and how the internet decided to work today. And I would love you to come back onto the Cosmic Prayer in a few months' time, when you're Dr. Ryan, which you are already, when you're formally Dr. Ryan, and you can even bring a guest with you, somebody that may have contributed as a story in one of your books. That would be so beautiful to come back in that way, to share and to show us in your new books, or those people's books coming out. So I'm for later on in the year when you are officially Dr. Ryan.
Thank you so much again.
And I'm going to leave this link here for those that are here and viewing. This is Ryan's website address. You can go there and find out more about him and his book, My Drug Dealer Brought Me to God. Being in wonderful things that Ryan is bringing to here. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you all for your patience. And thank you again, Ryan, for all that you are and for coming back and sharing here on the Cosmic Prayer today.
Thank you so much again.